Hey everyone, my name is Claire, and today I'm talking about 20 books that I want to read in 2022. Let's get into it. Okay, so, like I said, I have 20 books. I was tagged in this challenge on Instagram to pull out 20 books I want to read this year in 2022, and I did the challenge, put the books together, and then I was like, I really took it to heart. So I did that, and then I realized I wanted to talk about it. So I've got the 20 books with me today. I think it actually works out to be 21 because I have one book that I'm pairing onto another. But yeah, grab a little drink and get ready to dive in. So, first of all, because it is now February, I have already read 2 of these books. Yay! So I'm going to talk about them first. So the first one that I read chronologically, actually, I actually started with this one and then ended with this one in January, is the first book of 20 is High Fidelity. This is by Nick Hornby. This is just, I hate movie covers. This was made after the movie came out, which actually good movie. I like High Fidelity. I watched that movie first a few years ago, and then I found this for free in one of the little libraries, so I read it. And overall, this was really interesting. I was really conflicted about this book. If you're unfamiliar, it's about a guy who's kind of having like a midlife crisis, about 35, and he owns a record store. And he just feels like he's in like a dead end in his life because his most recent girlfriend has, they've broken up. She's left him for another man, and he's just kind of like in this a little bit of a downward spiral. So it's just a slice of his life as he's figuring stuff out. It's very, as a reader, you play like an active part almost, like he's talking to you. The main character, Rob, is talking to you the whole time in the book. So you feel like you're really like a friend sitting across the table from him in like a coffee shop or something. But yeah, so that is really good. I think the humor for the most part is really funny about this, even though it was written in the 90s, and I think it's set in the early 90s in England, in London. So for me, Canadian, 2022, a lot of the humor still translates. So yeah, overall I thought it was good. The main character, Rob, bugged me throughout, both in good ways and bad. I just felt like he was really self-pity-ish, which is basically the main central theme about this book, is just being self-pitying. So when I was in a self-pity mood, it was easier to read this book, because I was like, yeah, I get it. Like, life sucks, all that kind of like teenage angst stuff. But when I was like in a good mood, this was a hard book to read because I was like, get over yourself. But yeah, that's High Fidelity. The other book I read in January that's on my on my 20 for 2022 list is, oh, so exciting, on the other end of the spectrum, Hamnet by Maggio. Farrell. Man, this book was incredible. This is about Shakespeare's family. It's about his son, Hamnet, who passes away from Black Plague, and about grief, motherhood, sibling relationships, family relationships, all that kind of stuff. I loved this book. This was probably my top book for January. It's 5 stars. This was so good. I loved the way it was written. It was really slow, meditative. I loved how it didn't focus on Shakespeare at all. His name is never mentioned in this book. It's always the husband, the young man, the playwright, the father, all that kind of stuff. I loved that. I loved the focus on the children, and I loved the focus on his wife, Agnes, the mother. And I think just universally relatable. It's about, grief in families. It's about the bonds that we have as families, and how those can be tested and made and strengthened and weakened and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it had a wonderful sense of magic to it too, mysticism, all that kind of stuff. So I would definitely highly recommend this book, and I'm glad I put it on my top 20 for 2022. That is Hamnet by Maggio Farrell. I now have 18 books that I have not read yet this year, but I want to. First, I love these books, is Out by Carino. So Japanese author. This is a translated work. I love these Japanese classic vintage Japan is what they're called, books. And this one looks super intriguing. It's about women who work a late shift at a factory, the bonds that they have, and also the alienation they feel from the rest of their family. And then it turns into kind of a murder mystery. But I think this is going to be really, really great. I'm super excited to read this book. Next up, we have Dr. Zivago by Boris Pasternak. I got this book for my birthday from my parents. Beautiful cover again, very happy with. This is a Russian classic, or modern classic, I suppose. First published in 1957. I'm super intrigued by this. It's takes place during the Russian Revolution, as it says on the back, and I'm just super excited. This is another translated work from Russian. What excites me a little more about this is these translators on the bottom, Richard Pivier and Larissa Volokonsky. Hopefully that is correct. My apologies if it's not. I have read their translations before. They do really wonderful work. I've read the first 800 pages of War and Peace. Haven't quite finished it yet. In the edition that they translated, as well as my Penguin Classic version of Anna Karenina, which is the version I read. It's also translated by them, and that was really wonderful as well. So I have faith that this will be a good translation, and I have faith that this is going to be a really good book because I've heard lots of good things about it. So excited to dig into more Russian literature this year, building off of what I dug into last year. Cool. Up next, this is James Baldwin's Giovanni's Room. This looks like it's right up my alley. You know, it's about expats in Paris, 1950s, and I'm just really, really excited. I've also heard really great things about this book, so I'm so excited to read this. This next book, it's a Claire Morrison classic. I read one of these books every year, usually in the summertime, and that is an Ernest Hemingway book. So last summer I read, where is it? The Old Man and the Sea. The summer before that, I read The Sun Also Rises, and the summer before that, I read A Farewell to Arms. So this summer, probably in July or August, most likely August, I want to read For Whom the Bell Tolls. This is a book I tried to read many years ago, probably when I was still in high school, and could not get into it. I got considerably pretty far in. Like I got at least a third of the way in, maybe a quarter. Just couldn't do it, but I'm going to do it this year. I think it was probably because I wasn't reading it during the summertime. Ernest Hemingway and I only really work in the summertime for some reason. But yeah, I'm excited. I can only really tolerate his writing style like once a year. And now that I associate him with summer, I can only read them once a year during the summertime. So this is my summer holiday book, probably. But looking forward to this. This is about the Spanish Revolution or the Spanish Civil War. I mean, similar to A Farewell to Arms. You know, it's about an American who goes international, based loosely on Hemingway's own experiences. So I think this will be good. I'm looking forward to reading this. That is Ernest Hemingway's For Whom the Bell Tolls. Okay, this might be another summer read, just because I think, yes, part of it at least takes place during the summer. So looking forward to that. This is Swimming in the Dark by Tomasz Jedrowski. This is a Polish author, but it was actually written in English, so it's not a translated work. But I'm just really looking forward to this. I've heard really awesome things about it. It takes place in 1980s Poland, and it focuses on two men, university students, who meet at a summer agricultural camp, and they begin a romantic relationship. Sorry, I'm trying to like scan the back and also speak at the same time. So it's about that, and just all these things that affect this relationship, but also what's going on in their lives outside of that. Obviously, in the 1980s, Poland is communist. It's a communist country, but also like there's the decline of communism. There's all this stuff going on, political divide. But I mean, what really draws me to it, in addition to the historical context, is just like the story of first love, this kind of like coming of age story. I think it'll be really interesting. So I'm excited for this. I think it's going to be really good, and I've heard really good things from people I love and trust on Instagram, so I think this will be a good book for me. But yeah, this is Swimming in the Dark by Tomasz Jedrowski. Okay, let's talk about some fantasy. This is another book I got for my birthday with some birthday money. Very exciting. This is The Shadow of What Was Lost by James Islington. Yes, Islington is what it looks like. This is the first in a trilogy, and I've seen this book several times at Chapters Indigo, which is kind of the closest new bookstore to me, I believe. And I just am intrigued by this really, kind of stark tricolor cover. And I just think it sounds really, really interesting. And then also these little blurbs at the front. I've never really been drawn in by them, but this one, there's a couple on this book that like drew me in and was like, oh, maybe this is the book for me. The first is right on the cover, B&N Sci-Fi and Fantasy, which I'm assuming is Barnes & Noble. But love the Wheel of Time, ? This is about to become your new favorite series. So I do love the Wheel of Time as a concept. In practice, gets a little blurry. I do love the Wheel of Time, so I think this will be a good fit for me as well. On the back, it says, storytelling assurance rare for a debut. Exciting. But it also goes on to say, fans of Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson will find much to admire. So those things kind of drew me in. That's a Guardian quote, by the way. So yeah, I am excited to read this book. Moving on, another hefty one. Really hope I can get to it this year. I really hope I can finish it. It's going to be a real achievement if I do. And that book is The Count of Monte Cristo. This is by Alexandre Dumas. This is a classic. It's a classic novel, but I've heard that this is surprisingly readable. I've heard that it's very adventurous, very exciting. So I am intrigued and excited by that it is not as bad as it looks. I think this will be really interesting. I have it in this lovely Oxford World Classic edition, and yeah, I'm excited to read this, and I hope I can do it. This book is huge. Obviously, we're looking at almost 1,100 pages, but I can do it. I believe in myself. On the opposite end of the spectrum, but this is Edward Irenaeus Prime Stevenson. That's a big old name. This is Left to Themselves. Edward Prime Stevenson is known to be one of the earliest LGBTQ writers who was kind of more widely published, I believe. I will correct myself right now, that's wrong. And I've just heard really good things about this book. It's very small. Yeah, I think it's only about 60 pages. So I'm excited about this. I've heard good things about this, and I think it'll be really interesting. And next up, we're getting there. We're over halfway now. This is exciting. This is like a little bit, outside of what I normally read, but I'm excited to read it. And that is Mario Puzo's The Godfather. Cue the music. I've not watched the movie. I tried to originally, but wasn't in the mood to watch it. It was not, the movie I needed to watch at that time. So now I'm going to read the book, then watch the movie, as we all say we shall do. This is good. This is crime. This is mob. This is mafia, family, greed, seduction of power, all that kind of stuff. I'm excited. I've read the first couple pages just to see what it's like, and it's been really interesting and exciting, so really looking forward to reading this. Cover is great too, so added bonus again. Next up, we're going to jump back into fantasy science fiction. This is so exciting. Peter David's Imzadi, which is a Star Trek Next Generation novel. I tried to read this book originally over the summer. I got like 60 pages in, just put it down and then didn't pick it up again. So I'm making like a real effort to read it this year. This is kind of considered one of the best Star Trek novels across the board. So I'm really excited to see what that means, what that looks like. It's also a time travel story. So I'm cool. I'm into it. But yeah, this is another book I want to read this year. Star Trek. This is a classic I've never read before, so I'm excited to try it out. This is Sylvia Plath's The Bell Jar. I do not know a lot about this book. I see it's one of those books I see everywhere. I've seen that it's a very formulative book for a lot of people, very important to them as they were growing up, and, you know, a lot of, you know, just their growing up emotions are reflected in this book. So I'm excited to read this book and see what it's all about. But yes, that is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. All right, moving on. Of course, wouldn't be a Claire Morrison book list without some, you know, interwar fiction, British fiction about, you know, the pitfalls, the erosion of the British upper class. And this time for our list, it is D.H. Lawrence, Lady Chatterley's Lover. This is very exciting. I have a lot of D.H. Lawrence on my shelf that I've not read yet, but this is a scandalous book, at least at the time it was written. Yeah, it's just important in terms of censorship of books in that history, and what people deemed appropriate for people to read and all that kind of stuff. So I'm excited to read this. I think it'll be really interesting, and if nothing else, I think it'll be informative in terms of censorship, the history of censorship, as well as, you know, where the public was at when this book was written and why they were so against it. So I mean, it'll also be interesting. I read some contemporary romance, so it'll be cool to see like what makes this scandalous versus like what we read these days in a modern context. So cool. All right, so getting to close to the end. These next three books, or the next two books, are going to be lumped together with the 21st book, which I mentioned at the beginning of this, which is a companion book. So it's not counted towards my 20. But those three books are, the main one is James Joyce Ulysses, and then pairing together, I also want to read Homer's Odyssey, as well as, this is the companion piece, Ulysses Unbound, which is by Terence Killian, a reader's companion to James Joyce's Ulysses. So I really want to read Ulysses. I think it's important for me to read it. I really want to. I really want to, you know, unlock what this book has. I've read Joyce before. I love Dubliners. So I really want to read this book, but I knew going into it this was going to be challenging. So I wanted to get a companion piece to it, which is why I have Ulysses Unbound. This goes through each section of the book and kind of talks about historical context, what what James Joyce is like commenting on or writing about, which can kind of get a little confusing if you're just reading the book. So that's why I have that. But then as I was doing my research, I also realized that James Joyce took a lot of inspiration from the Odyssey in structure and stuff like that. So I figured that I'd go slow and go through all three, because the Odyssey is a book I want to read, so I might as well pair it with something and see how they compare and contrast what James Joyce took from Homer's Odyssey, and then using Ulysses Unbound as a kind of capstone to be like, this is what it really means, and I can be like, I get it. So that's these three books. All right, we're down to our last four. Next up, so excited to be continuing my journey with this author, not only because we share the same last name, but because she's a fabulous author, and you probably already know who this is. I really want to read Beloved by Toni Morrison. I started my Toni Morrison journey last year. I read Home and I read Sula. Both I really, really enjoyed. I found them really profound, really exciting, and was just really intrigued and interested and enjoyed Morrison's writing style. So this is the big one. This is kind of the big kahuna. Obviously she's written lots, but I think in the cultural mind, this is the biggest, Beloved. So I'm super excited to read this. This is the winner of the Nobel Prize. So it's a big deal, and I'm excited to read it. So that's that one. Another author I'm excited to continue my journey with, who I love quite a bit, and I read some of their work last year, is Christopher Isherwood. And specifically this year, I really want to make an effort to read Christopher and His Kind. I love the Berlin stories, and this is kind of more of a memoir style version of that story. That the Goodbye to Berlin is like a fictional story based on Isherwood's own experience. Christopher in His Kind is going to be more about his actual experiences. So I'm really looking forward to that. Love Goodbye to Berlin, probably one of my favorite books of all time. And last year, I read A Single Man, which is probably one of my top books of that year. It was really fabulous, and I read All the Conspirators, which was also very good. So I'm excited to read Christopher in His Kind this year. I think it'll be really interesting. It's about his time in Berlin, and Berlin nightlife, and his own route to his personal sexual liberation. So super cool. I'm also interested to see how he deals with the Nazis in this version versus Goodbye to Berlin, all that kind of stuff. Super, super excited. So that's Christopher in His Kind by Christopher Isherwood. Sweet. Okay. Next up, another queen of 20th century writing, and that is Joan Didion. This is Slouching Towards Bethlehem. I've read a little bit. I think I read the first, it's not really like a chapter because they're all separate essays, I think. But I read the first essay chapter of this a while ago, and I really want to read the whole thing. This is all about the late 60s California in particular. This was first published in 1968, and I'm just really excited. I love that era. I'm excited about what she has to say about the counterculture, everything that's going on in this really tumultuous period in Californian history, but also American history at large. So I think this will be really good. I've heard nothing but good things about Joan Didion, so cool. And to wrap it all up, starting another series that I probably won't finish in a year, The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. This is the first book in the Stormlight Archives. I want to read this book so bad, but the size of it is really intimidating me. So this year I was like, I gotta stop crying about it and just read it. So I'm really interested in this. I read the first 100 pages or so and was like really into it, but I was also like deep into Wheel of Time at the time. So I was like, I can't handle both of these books at the same time. Can't handle both these series. It's like too much for my little brain. So I really want to read this book. I think it'd be really awesome. It already is awesome and expansive, fantastical, and yeah. I think Sanderson has a big fan base for a reason, and I want to discover that reason, and I want to love it. So super excited. But yeah, so those are 20 books that I want to read this year. Obviously, I said at the beginning of this video, my goal is to actually read 40, which is a little bit more than what my goal for last year was. My goal for last year was 3 books every month, which worked out to 36 books total. I ended up reading 38, which is super awesome. So this year I was like, okay, I'm going to bump it up a little bit to 40. So I want to read 40 books. Feeling good about it. Read quite a few books in January. So I'm excited by that. I'm excited by these choices. So that'll fill up about half. Obviously, that leaves a lot of room to find some other stuff. I've read some contemporary romance. I've read some other fantasy that's not on this list. And obviously leave space for some Wheel of Time this year. You know, I'm not trying to push myself to read Wheel of Time like out of obligation. I want to read it because I enjoy it. So I want to read this year 6 and 7 and maybe 8 if I can do it. If I could read those, if I could read 6 and 7, that would be like, I would feel like an achievement. Of that, if I read 6 and 7 of Wheel of Time, if I read 8 as well, and 9, like that would be like icing on the cake. So that's my other goals in terms of other books I want to read. Obviously I want to continue with Wheel of Time. But yeah, those are 20 books I want to read this year. Let me know what books you want to get into this year, what books you want to read. If you had to choose 20 books to read this year, what would they be? If you're interested in following along on my reading journey in a more day-to-day basis, there's 2 things you can do. You can check out my Instagram, which is linked in the description of this video. I post there more regularly, as well as like just kind of like incoming thoughts as they come and things like that, as well as more of my daily life stuff. So you can check out my Instagram as well as my story graph. My story graph will have information on the kinds of books I want to read, my tags, my reading stats, as well as my progress on these books and others. So yeah, check them out if you're interested. Leave a comment, like I said, like the video if you liked it. Subscribe if you're liking the content I'm creating. It helps me out a lot. And check out any of my other videos. I've got lots now on the page. So yeah, hope you have a good afternoon, evening, whatever you got going on. And I will see you in the next video. Bye, everybody.